I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window of my penthouse, the city lights stretching like a sea of fireflies beneath me. The silk of my blouse clung to my skin, smooth and comforting, yet nothing could calm the fluttering in my chest. My phone buzzed on the marble counter, breaking the quiet hum of my apartment. A notification from my mother. "Dinner tonight, don't forget." I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering above it. Memories of the last family dinner rose unbidden, how they had made me eat in the kitchen, how the clatter of silverware against china was louder than their words. Their laughter had been sharp, dismissive, cutting through me like ice. And yet, here I was, successful, composed, wearing a smile they would never recognize as my own armor. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had built everything they said I never could, and still, a part of me hesitated. Could I face them tonight without flinching? The city smelled faintly of winter rain and roasted coffee from a cafe 2 blocks away, grounding me, reminding me of the calm I'd fought so hard to find. A deep breath. My heart thudded in my chest. Tonight, everything would change. But first, I had to remind myself who I truly was, a woman who had survived their disbelief and their disregard. A woman who was no longer hidden. I remember the night as if it were yesterday, though it had been years. The grand chandelier of our family dining room shimmered above, reflecting off the polished mahogany table. I had arrived with high hopes, my carefully folded napkin in hand, ready to laugh, to belong. Instead, they saw only the younger, naive version of me, the girl who dared to dream too loudly. "Why don't you sit in the kitchen, honey?" my father said, his words smooth but sharp, a practiced dismissal that cut deeper than any outburst could. My mother's eyes flicked away, not meeting mine, as if my presence there was a nuisance, a disruption to the perfection of their carefully curated lives. My cheeks burned, and a lump formed in my throat. I felt the sting of rejection and shame, the shaking of my hands as I turned toward the small, shadowed kitchen. Alone in that cramped space, the scent of leftover roast and stale candles clung to the air. The clatter of dishes from the main room was a harsh reminder of how invisible I had become. But in that silence, a small gift from my grandmother rested in my purse, a delicate silver locket, her handwriting engraved on the back. "Believe in yourself, even when they cannot." I held it, cold and reassuring against my palm, and felt a spark of defiance light inside me. That night I made a decision. I would no longer wait for them to recognize my worth. I would carve my own path, even if it meant walking alone. I left the kitchen with a quiet conviction of someone who had glimpsed the possibility of freedom. The sting of their laughter would haunt me for weeks, but it would also fuel a fire that no condescension, no insult, could extinguish. I stepped out of the mansion that night, the winter air biting my cheeks, and for the first time, I imagined a life where my success was mine alone, unshared, unapologetic, and untouchable by those who had belittled me. That vision, fragile as it was, became my compass. And so, my journey began, not just to escape their shadow, but to become someone they could no longer ignore. The first step toward freedom was terrifying. I moved into a tiny apartment, barely enough space for a bed and a desk, but it smelled of possibility, not judgment. My locket rested on the nightstand, a constant reminder that I wasn't defined by the voices that had tried to diminish me. I took odd jobs at first, learning skills I'd never been encouraged to pursue: finance, design, negotiations, even public speaking. Every late night, every failed attempt, every tiny victory etched into me a resilience I didn't know I possessed. It was during one of those long nights at a small co-working space that I met Ms. Evelyn Brooks, a seasoned entrepreneur who believed in potential rather than pedigree. She had sharp eyes, the kind that seemed to see past pretenses, and when she glanced at my portfolio, she said, "You're capable of more than you think. Let me help you get there." That simple sentence, laced with conviction, was a lifeline. She became a mentor, guiding me through the labyrinth of business deals, client meetings, and self-doubt. The struggles were relentless. Some nights, I would collapse onto my couch, exhausted, questioning every decision. Could I really make it without their approval? But then, a first small client signed on, a boutique investment firm trusting me to manage a modest fund. I remember the exhilaration, the tiny spark of pride that whispered, "You are capable." Then came the first profitable sale, followed by a growing reputation for integrity and ingenuity. Every win was a whisper against the taunts and dismissals of the past. I learned to keep my success hidden from my family. My social media posts were modest, sometimes deliberately ambiguous, designed to avoid envy or scrutiny. Only a select few knew the truth of what I had built: a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, contracts with clients I had once only dreamed of contacting, and slowly, a financial independence that was exhilarating in its quiet power. The apartment that had felt cramped and lonely transformed into a space filled with purpose. My office desk now stacked with contracts and proposals, the walls lined with framed encouragements and milestones, every corner a testament to nights spent forging a life that was unapologetically mine. The locket glinted under the desk lamp each night, a reminder that the journey was not just about wealth or recognition, but about reclaiming the dignity that had been denied to me. I had become someone they could never have imagined: strong, capable, unshakable, and yet, the thought of seeing them again brought a nervous flutter. Not fear, exactly, but a recognition that the past and the present were about to collide in a way that would redefine every memory I had endured. And I was ready for it. The evening arrived with a cool breeze brushing against the city skyline, carrying the faint scent of rain and asphalt. I had instructed the driver to bring them to my office. Not my penthouse, not the apartment I'd started from, but the sleek, elegant space that reflected years of effort, sacrifice, and quiet triumph. The lobby greeted them with polished marble floors and abstract art that shimmered under recessed lighting. Their footsteps echoed against the high ceilings as they followed me into the office, expecting perhaps a modest, struggling version of me, the girl they had dismissed so easily. I watched from behind my desk, hands resting lightly on the polished wood, feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation. My family paused at the doorway, eyes scanning the room. Expensive art adorned the walls, a large mahogany desk anchored the space, and subtle personal touches: a photograph of my grandmother, the silver locket displayed in a shadow box, spoke of both memory and achievement. "Wow," my mother breathed, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. My father's jaw tightened, his hands clutching the straps of his briefcase, as if grounding himself in the sudden reality. My sister's eyes darted around, searching for some sign that this wasn't real, that the girl who had eaten in the kitchen all those years ago wasn't standing here as a commanding presence. I smiled, leaning back in my chair, letting silence stretch, letting them absorb the atmosphere I had created. The tension was delicious, a slow burn that mirrored the years of careful planning, hard work, and quiet triumph. Finally, I spoke. "You probably expected to see someone struggling, someone still small, someone ignored. But here I am." My voice was calm, confident, unwavering. "This is my company. I own it outright. Every client, every contract, every achievement, my work. And yes, I am financially independent, more than I ever imagined possible. This office, my team, the investments, they all bear my name." Disbelief hung in the air like a fog. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father's face turned pale, a flush of shame creeping across his cheeks. My sister's shoulders slumped, as if the weight of every mocking word she had ever uttered had finally landed squarely on her own conscience. I let them look, really look, for a moment longer. Their expressions were priceless, a mixture of guilt, amazement, regret, and awe. I had waited years for this moment, and the power of it was intoxicating. But there was more than pride in my chest. It was a strange, sweet satisfaction, tempered with the memory of all the nights I had doubted myself, all the moments I had fought to prove that I belonged not just in the room, but at the very table of life they had tried to deny me. "And yes," I added, lifting the silver locket toward them, letting the light catch its delicate surface, "I never forgot the words that brought me here. Believe in yourself, even when others cannot." I did. And now, I let the pause hang. I decide the terms of our next chapter. The room was thick with silence after my declaration. Their eyes darted between me and the silver locket, searching for a clue as to what I might do next. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on the desk, letting the weight of my presence fill the space. This was the moment where years of neglect, dismissal, and ridicule transformed into something different. Control, yes, but tempered with intention and fairness. "I will help you," I said slowly, watching the disbelief ripple through their faces. "But not without conditions. Not without change. I have no interest in recreating the past, and I won't allow the old patterns to continue." My mother was the first to speak, her voice tentative. "Conditions?" "Yes," I replied. "For every support I offer, there must be effort from your side. Mother, I want you to pursue your passion for painting again. You've abandoned it for criticism and perfectionism that serve no one. Father, I expect honesty and humility in all your dealings. You cannot keep trying to control what you don't understand. Sister," I looked directly at her, steady and firm, "I expect respect for boundaries, and for you to stop underestimating people based on appearance or status. No more mocking, no more condescension." Each condition was carefully measured, tied not to punishment, but to growth. My voice softened, revealing that while I was firm, I cared deeply. This isn't about revenge. It's about healing. It's about creating a future where we can interact without the toxicity of the past shadowing every word. If you can meet these terms, we can rebuild. If not, I will continue my life without compromise, and you'll watch, from whatever space you choose, as I thrive. They nodded, slowly, as though absorbing a language they had never heard before. Their expressions shifted, from skepticism to cautious understanding, from guilt to the faintest glimmer of hope. They realized that I had changed the rules of engagement. I was no longer the girl in the kitchen. I was the architect of our future interactions. I stood, walking toward the window, letting the city lights reflect in my eyes. "These conditions are not just for me. They are for you too. This is your chance to grow, to reclaim parts of yourselves that you've neglected. But know this, I will not compromise my dignity or my life for anyone who refuses to step forward." I turned back toward them, the authority in my stance undeniable. The power had shifted, not as a tool of vengeance, but as a framework for respect, growth, and accountability. In that moment, I understood the true strength of independence. It wasn't money or ownership or status. It was the ability to demand integrity and compassion from those closest to you, while offering the same in return. And they, finally, seemed to grasp it. Weeks passed, and the changes began to take root. My mother picked up her brushes again, painting late into the night, her laughter no longer tinged with the bitterness of past disappointments. My father started volunteering at a local charity, learning to listen before giving advice, his pride slowly transforming into humility. My sister, hesitant at first, began attending workshops, seeking skills she had once mocked in others, and I watched her grow with a mixture of relief and quiet satisfaction. I, too, had grown not just in wealth or status, but in the depth of my own understanding. The girl who had once hidden in the kitchen, trembling at dismissive words, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had embraced every challenge, endured every slight, and emerged not just successful, but unshakably grounded. The silver locket rested against my heart each morning, a reminder of the promise I had made to myself years ago, to believe, even when others could not. One evening, as the city lights flickered like distant stars, I found myself standing at the balcony of my penthouse, the same view that had once been both solace and challenge. I sipped my coffee, inhaling the crisp winter air, and smiled to myself. The mansion, the office, the life I had built, it was more than triumph. It was proof that resilience, dignity, and vision could transform pain into power. I thought of the dinner, the one that had begun it all, the one where they had forced me into the kitchen, convinced I was less than worthy. And I realized that night had not broken me. It had sparked a journey that revealed the depths of my strength, my patience, and my capacity for both compassion and firm resolve. Life had shifted in ways I had only dreamed of back then. The laughter around the table was no longer tainted by judgment. It was genuine, earned, and mutual. And as I stood there, looking out over the city that had watched me grow, I whispered to myself the words that had carried me through every hardship. Believe in yourself, even when they cannot. And now I could finally live by them completely. Narrator: Emily Lawson. Bottom of form.